Okay, in this tutorial, you'll learn how to have your character walk. As your character walks, you'll have the appearance of your character holding their blaster weapon. Your character will be able to have the appearance of jumping with their blaster weapon. When you left click and hold the mouse, your character will fire the blaster weapon. Wherever the mouse moves, your character will aim at the mouse. When the mouse goes the other direction, your character will flip to aim with the mouse. You'll learn how to do that. Also, if you notice, when I left click on the mouse, the character shakes. So the character is actually shaking as the character fires the blaster weapon. So that's what you're going to learn as you work your way through this tutorial. Okay, so we need to say, for this condition, when the player is not moving, what to do. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Sprites, Animations and Images. We're going to go to Change the Animation by Name. We're going to click the player because that's the object we're working with. Then we're going to go Quotation. We're putting in the name of what we want to happen when the character isn't moving, which is the idle animation. So we're going to click OK. So now with that done, we're going to click this preview button. So now when our character walks and then our character stops walking, you can see that our character goes back to our idle animation. However, when we push the opposite way, the character walks like it's going backwards. We need to set that up. So I'm going to click this X button to get out of this preview menu. Okay, so how do we set that up? We're going to click on this main event. We have this highlighted blue underneath this main event condition as well as the action. We're going to click Add a Sub Event. We're going to click Add a Condition. We're going to go to Keyboard. And then we're going to do is select Key Pressed. Now we can type in the key. What we want is the right arrow key. So I'm going to hold Shift, press R. This is capital for these arrow buttons. So here's right. We can see Gdevelop saying, oh, is this the button? So I'll left click on right. That's the button we want to work with. Then we're going to click OK. So with that done, we want to have things that basically what we're doing now is we're setting things up so that the character will turn when we try to, go the opposite direction so the character isn't walking backwards. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Sprite. This time, where previously we were going to Animations and Images, this time we're going to Effects. So now what we're going to do is flip the object horizontally. We're going to select the player since that's what we're working with. And we have this thing that says Activate Flipping. We're going to select No. Then we're going to click OK. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to click back on this again because we want a sub-event of this event, not a sub-event of this. We're going to click that sub-event button. And what we can do is we can click here. We can copy this and paste this. For this one, we're just going to do this again just because I think this is important. If this happens to be your first tutorial in Gdevelop, I'll go through this quickly. Keyboard, key pressed. Click here, hold Shift, press L, left pops up, we'll click here, click OK, we'll click Add an Action, we'll go to Sprite, we're not going to Animations and Images, we're going to Effects, we're going to flip the object horizontally, that object is the player, and then for left, we do want to click Activate Flipping, and then click OK. So you might say, well, what is the deal with Activate Flipping? If you bring in a character pointed to the right, when you have things set up like, pointed to the right, so point it that way, as far as like them looking like they're walking this way, this setup will work where the right key is pressed, horizontal, flipped no, and then left is flip yes. Now, if you bring in a sprite and the character is is facing towards the left, you're going to have to do the opposite of this. So we don't have to get that much into it. This should work for what we have here. So what we're going to do is click preview to make sure. Now when we're standing there, our character's in idle, we push the right key, our character walks. Now when we push the left key, our character, is walking like they're supposed to. So I'm going to click so I was just going back and forth between the keys. So I'm going to press the X button to get out of that preview. Okay, so we have another animation to set up. That is the jump animation. Now, for all of this, our character, see, these sub-events are dependent on this main event. The character is on the floor. When we jump, our character is not on the floor, so we're going to click here to highlight here. However, when we highlighted here before, and when I'm saying highlighting, I mean we're highlighting the event here as far as the condition as well as the action. We click the sub-event before. We don't want a sub-event because this isn't dealing with the character being on the floor, our player character. Our character is jumping. So now we're going to go to add a new empty event. And we can see that this is not underneath here. This is its own new event, not dependent on this. Okay. So we're going to click add condition. We're going to go down to platform behavior and we're going to go to is jumping. We're going to left click there. We're going to choose the object, which is the player. We're then going to click OK. Okay, so now we're saying when the character is jumping, what do we want to happen? We're going to click add action. We're going to go to sprite, sprite, actions and animations. We're going to select change the animation by name. We're going to click player because that's the object we're working with. We're going to put quotations because this is a name that we gave for this animation. We're then going to click OK. So now with that set up, we're going to click the preview button to test this out. So let's make sure that our character's in idle animation. They're like they're supposed to be. Character's walking forward, walking back. Now when we press jump, the character is almost doing like we want. Now one thing the character is doing, see how the character looks like it's bending down? So the character is, for the most part, working. So it's jumping. However, we can adjust the animation. So we're going to go to new scene, double click on the player. We're going to go to jump. And our character is already standing up for the most part in this position. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click. When I right click this selected here, I'm then going to click delete selection. All right. You want to right click. When you right click, you get this check mark. Then you select delete selection. So there's some extra frames in here we don't need. So I'm right clicking, delete selection, delete selection. So we have 2 frames of the character jumping down. Then we have a bunch of frames of the character jumping up. I'm going to select delete selection from there. So we have the character jumping down and then the character jumping up. Let's click the preview button. That looks good to me. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click apply. Now let's click the preview button to see how this works. So we're going to press the space bar key. Okay, I'm going to click out of here, click back on player. Let's go back to jump. Let's take away this other one. Let's click apply. Click the preview button again. Okay, that's better. So now I'm going to click this X button to get out of that preview menu. Okay, this tutorial is about our blaster. Let's bring in the actual blaster. You saw it when the character walked as well as when it jumped. However, you can see right here the character is not holding anything right there. So what we're going to do is click this plus button to the right. We're going to go to sprite. We're going to name this blaster. We're going to click this plus button to the right. We're going to click the plus button to the left. We're going to go to where our blaster is at. We're going to go into our folder. So I have these 2. I had this one that had more of a 3D view. Then I have this one that's like basically like 2D, easier to see. So I'm going to click this one, then click open. We don't need any behaviors on this. I'm then going to click apply. I'm going to left click here. This highlighted the blaster blue. And then with it highlighted blue, I'm going to left click and drag this out. So now what we want to do is, this is obviously too big. I'm going to hold shift. Shift helps us to constrain this sprite. So by holding shift and using my mouse to go to the side, we can shrink the sprite down. I'll let go of shift now. And I'm seeing how this looks. That looks about good to me. So this doesn't have to be right on your sprite. We just need this to be the general size that it needs to be. Make this somewhat smaller. It's also good to have this, the way we're setting this up, to have this generally be, see this square around the blaster, to have the size be so that this is generally in the center of your character is a good thing as well. So we're going to move this up like that. Okay, there's a few things that need to be done to this blaster. So we're going to left click here to highlight it blue. We're going to double click. Then we're going to look to where we see this edit hitbox as well as edit points. I'm going to left click on edit points. And then basically what happens when you bring a sprite in is we have this point right here, which is our origin point. We have our center point here as well. We need another point to have the actual blaster bolts come out of this blaster, which is going to be right here. So I'm going to scroll down and we can see here's our origin point. Here's our center. We're going to click this plus button here, which gives us a new point. I'm going to name this SP for shooting point. I'm then going to click here and then enter in 90. Now when I put in this 90, I'm only putting that there so I can see the point. So that made the point be right here. So now I'm going to drag the point. So again, the 90 was just so I could get to see this. It would bring it out in a way where it's easy for me to grab. Because as I grab this, you can see like these numbers here change. So I'm going to take this point and put this point right to the front of our blaster. So I'm going to put it right there. And then I'm going to click, I'm going to scroll down, click close, and then I'm going to click apply.